Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
And today, Patrick and I have a special guest. I call him the Transit Evangelist. It's Paul Comfort, who has a storied career in transportation going all the way back to the 1980s. Oh my goodness, Paul. Uh, Begin by telling us about your background and what you're doing and what's going on.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Clay and Patrick. It's exciting to be one of your inaugural guests. I'm excited about your podcast, your video podcast, which is key these days. That's what people are doing. And happy to help in any way I can to promote it. And I think it's a great place for a free exchange of ideas in the free state.
Great.
So my background is, I was born in Virginia, but moved here when I was 5. So I basically lived my entire life in Maryland and spent most of that time here on the Eastern Shore. Queen Anne's County is where I live, just over the Bay Bridge, as people place it. I grew up on Kent Island in Kentmore, then moved to Sudlersville, and now live outside of Centerville. I've lived here basically for the last 15 or 20 years, outside a 5-year stint when I was in Charles County as their county administrator. As you mentioned, Clay, my career has been in government and transportation. Your father actually played a key role in my early career. Your father, Clay Mitchell, who was the Speaker of the House, was from Kent County back when the Eastern Shore had some power in the legislature. And helped me right after I got out of college. I went to Chesapeake College. I was president of student government here locally, and then went to UMBC. And during that time, I was president of the Governor's Youth Advisory Council, which was when Harry Hughes was in governor. And I represented all the youth in Maryland to the state. I was active in politics and ran for county commissioner here in Queen Anne's County as a Democrat, back when Democrats were more conservative here on the shore, when I was 21. And your dad arranged, I was looking for a job when I got out of college in government. And your dad arranged several interviews for me with various people. And actually, got me an interview to be a speechwriter for Governor Schaefer. And I was offered the job, and like an idiot, I turned it down. I cannot believe I did that, but I wanted to be more doing things, not writing things. And now, of course, at the end of my career, I'm right back writing things. I've gone full circle.
Full circle.
What'd you say?
I said full circle. That's great.
Yeah, exactly, man. Crazy. When you're young, you think you know it all, and you don't. But anyway, so Irving Pinder. Patrick's very important. He's getting calls on his next poll coming in. C. Irving Pinder had also run for office the same time I did for county commissioner. He ran for orphans court or clerk of court, or I think it was register of wills. Maybe we both lost. But he was a great guy. He was the head of our county Department of Aging. And he said, Paul, he basically offered me a chance to interview for a brand new position they started in the county called Transportation Coordinator for the Department of Aging. And so I interviewed and got the job. And for 7 years, I worked in Queen Anne's County. I established the county-wide bus system. The set of commissioners that included Wheeler Baker was there at the time. And they asked me to, move from just providing transportation for seniors and people with disabilities to a larger system. So we started county-wide. It was great. I got a chapter in my upcoming book called Do Not Despise the Day of Small Beginnings. And the idea is, I learned so much in those 7 years. We had 15 employees, a $300,000 or $400,000 budget, but I did everything. I wrote the grants. I figured out the bus stops. I actually went out and put the bus stop signs in the ground with people from Public Works who helped me, and did it all, worked with people. Remember Bobby Schock from the Jetty and Karen Ortel. They helped me raise money from 50 businesses in the county to help match the state grant so that we could buy more buses and vehicles, because the county was low on funds at one of those years. You remember there was like real trouble back around 89, 90, and employees didn't get raises that year and that kind of stuff. So fast forward, basically in 1991, Countywide won a big award. The Queen Anne's County Countywide. It was the Community Transportation Association of America's Transit System of the Year. So I went to Orlando, won the award, and a year or two later, as a result of that, I got a call from a guy named Steve Fatante, actually, who said, Paul, we have a company called Mayflower Contract Services. We manage city transit systems under contract around the country, and would you like to come and work for us in business development? So I left the county, went into the private sector, and my career took off, and basically I went around the country bidding on running paratransit mostly, which is, transportation for people with disabilities and elderly folks. And then and did that for a while, worked for a bunch of different companies, ended up working for Mark Joseph, who was owned Yellow Transportation in Baltimore, Yellow Cab, Yellow Bus. We were the official motor coach company for the Ravens and the Orioles. I had so much fun meeting them, riding on the bus with them, taking them to the Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. It was a great experience. We had a limo company. We had contracts to run fixed route and paratransit service in Central Maryland, Northern Virginia. I started a service in DC, and the day we're recording this is the same week as 9/11. And I was just remembering yesterday, I was in the offices in Baltimore City the day they struck not only the Twin Towers, but the Pentagon. And my vehicle drivers, we were in a staff meeting, they're calling us saying, there's ashes falling down on it's just terrible. The city was in gridlock and falling down on their vehicle. So we did all that. It was an amazing adventure and time. And then I ran for state's attorney here in, I think, 2002. I ran against Chip Gregory, who I thought, I can beat Chip. He's been there 20 years. And I could have beat him probably, but Frank beat him first. Frank Cradaville did, who ran against him in the Democratic primary and then ran against me and beat me good, 57-43. Frank's a great guy. I'm, in the end, everything works out the way it's supposed to. I ended up getting the position as county administrator. So I worked with Frank, actually oversaw the state's attorney's budget somewhat in that role. And so that was my favorite job, being a county administrator, running the Queen Anne's County government day to day, parks and recreation. We built the South Island Trail, overseeing the expansion of the airport, working with the Board of Ed, making sure the sheriff's deputies got a better retirement plan, all that kind of stuff. We had a ball for 4 years. And then I was invited to do the same job in Charles County, Maryland, closer to Washington, D.C. And so I took that job, much bigger county, 3 times as big of an operation for a couple of years. Then went back into public transportation in Washington, D.C., running Washington Metro's paratransit system for a contractor, the largest American contractor. At the time, it was the largest single contract in America, $100 million. And I was the day-to-day director of operations. And we had, 12 garages, 1,500 drivers and staff and dispatchers. And we transported 8,000 to 10,000 people a day with disabilities to their appointments. People may see the red, white, and blue vans in the Washington, D.C. area called Metro Access. That's what I kind of ran under contract. So it was a great experience. Moved back to Queen Anne's County after I'd finished my job there in Charles, out here in Roosburg, where I live now. And then ran for county commissioner in 2014. Was selected as actually the top vote getter in that year's election, the general election. And at the same time, my friend, Governor Larry Hogan, who I'd been working with through his group Change Maryland and all that, and we had helped each other's campaigns. He actually came to my big fundraiser I had at Annie's Paramount Steakhouse. You might have been there, Clay.
I was there.
Yeah. And helped introduce him to the Republican glitterati in the county, that kind of a thing. And we ran kind of, we all ran together. All the Republican candidates around Maryland ran with Larry at the top of the ticket. And he won and I won. We were super excited. I remember being up. I went from Queen Anne's County right over to his victory party that night. And I remember being up on the stage with Channel 13, kind of like representing people in the crowd, talking about, we were so excited to have him lead our state. Shortly thereafter, Clay, we were down in Cambridge, and I remember the moment. It was 10 years ago, right about now. He put his hand on my shoulder. We were at his big victory celebration. Thank you to the Shore party. My kids were right beside me. And I remember him putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, "Paul, we've been talking about you." And I said, "Really?" "Yes, we've been talking about you." And he said, "I think we want you to come take over the Maryland Transit Administration. You've had 20 years experience in transportation. You've run county governments and you're an attorney. You've got what we need." So several months later, it's actually 2 weeks after the uprising in Baltimore, I finally took the position as head of MTA. And it was a great experience. It was the 11th largest public transit system in America, fixed route bus, 750 buses, a commuter train system into Washington, D.C. called Mark Train from Western Maryland and the Baltimore area, commuter buses, which serve Queen Anne's County and other counties to go into Washington, D.C. We had deals with 7 motor coach companies, 350 motor coaches went in every day, a paratransit system, the 4th or 5th largest in the country, and then the subway system and the light rail system, the light rail that Governor Schaefer wanted to be there on the first day of the opening stadium with the Orioles and Camden Yards. And they got it done on the first day. And so altogether, it was around 380,000 passengers a day were riding the system. And Governor Hogan took me to his office shortly after I got the position in his office in Annapolis on the second floor of the State House and said, Paul, and the Lieutenant Governor was there, Chief of Staff, and some other folks. He said, listen, I need you to basically blow the place up and start over again. The MTA is one of the worst run agencies in state government. It's adrift. It doesn't have direction, and we really need to get things shaped up. So that's what I did. I spent 2 years shaping it up, shipping out, I don't know, 50 top leaders probably left the agency while I was there on purpose. And we brought in experts from around the country. We developed a brand new system called Baltimore Link. We revamped all the bus routes and took a lot of data that we already had. And since then, I have been, for the last 7 years, I've moved into this role, Clay, that you mentioned called Transit Evangelist. So I ended up going to work for one of the world's largest software companies. Whoever thought I'd work for a software company? But they provide software and hardware equipment that goes in buses to bus systems and transit systems around the world. It's continued to grow. My position has grown. The company's grown. And so now I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Officer of a company called Modaxo, which is the parent company for about 45 software companies around the world. We serve, systems from Singapore to San Francisco and everywhere in between. And so I'm the face of the company. Although Patrick, looks great, he would be a great face for the company. They've chosen me, this brash American, to be their face of the company. So I travel all over the world. I've got an amazing job. I'm very blessed. And they don't need me to sell anything. What they want me to do is give back to the industry. So I write books. I'm working on my 7th book. I've written a book a year since I left the MTA, all on public transportation, all of them conglomerates. There's the latest book. Went to #1 on Amazon for a few weeks on transportation books, as have 4 of my books. Very excited about that. I also host a podcast called Transit Unplugged. It's #1 in the world, heard in 100 countries for transit. I interview CEOs and top executives of transit agencies around the world. The guest this week is the head of bus performance at Transport for London. And so, we've got, it's a half-hour interview show where I talk to people about the latest and greatest trends happening in transportation. We don't mention our company. We don't sell software. The goal is, as I said, thought leadership and connection with people in the industry. And then 3 years ago, after the pandemic, we started a TV show, which is what I'm spending a lot of my time on now, Transit Unplugged TV. We just launched a new episode today. Once a month we do. This one's from Vienna, Austria. Vienna. It was amazing.
Oh,
We took a night jet train down from Hamburg, Germany, spent 3 or 4 days at a conference there where I spoke, did a book signing, and then toured the Vienna transit system in the city. It's amazing. We can learn from how they do things in Europe here in America, for sure, how they run public transit.
the 2 best jobs in the world are lieutenant governor and what you do.
Yeah. And then I speak at conferences. Last week, I was in St. Louis. I was a keynote speaker for the Missouri Transit Association annual conference. The guy, Clay, that runs the transit system there called Bi-State, it's a congressionally created PAC because it serves Illinois and Missouri. They run the little shuttle thing that goes to the top of the arch. So he took me to the top of the arch, gave me behind the scenes tour. I've always wanted to do that. So that's there's a 7-minute version of my history, but you asked, so there it goes.
That's great. Tell us a bit more, Paul, the traffic problems that have occurred here. We have the Bay Bridge, and expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I grew up on Kent Island, and I remember before there was all those overpasses. I remember actually when there was a traffic light at the intersection of Route 50 and Route 8 on Kent Island. And I remember my car dying at that traffic light and me having to get out and push it across and pop it into second because my starter wouldn't work and go. But then Governor Schaefer had a bright idea, which was reach the beach, man. We have traffic is bad. We got to get people to the beach. And so that's when all the overpasses came. They eliminated as many as possible of the stoplights on Route 50 to get them to the beach. And then Governor Hogan continued that effort by dualizing Route 404, which is an alternate route to get people to the Delaware beaches, Rehoboth, et cetera. It was a really strong initiative of his first term in office. But I remember being at our meetings, Clay, up in Baltimore when I was head of the MTA. People may not understand, but Governor Mandel reorganized state government and created a Department of Transportation whose first secretary was actually Harry Hughes from the Eastern Shore, somehow related to my wife in Denton, where she came from. He's like a great third uncle or something like that, I think. But anyway, so they recreated the department and brought together 6 modes, they call them. Transit, which is what I did, which is, it includes short line rail freight tracks across. We have them too at the MTA, as well as all the transit that I mentioned in Baltimore. Then there is the State Highway Administration. Then there's the MDTA, which often gets confused with the MTA. MDTA is the Maryland Transportation Authority, and they oversee all the toll bridges and tunnels, including the Bay Bridge, the Key Bridge, those kind of things. And then there is the MVA, right, Motor Vehicle Administration, then the port and the airport. So the six of us reported into the Secretary of Transportation and still do. It's a guy named Paul Wiedefeld now, a great guy, good secretary, good friend of mine. He used to head up the MTA. Then he was at BWR Airport. Then he was at WMATA. Great experienced guy, man. So happy we have him as our secretary. But when I was in meetings and I was talking to people, the idea of a third Bay Bridge was coming up when I was there. This was 8, 9, 10 years ago. And I remember conversations with senior leaders of the department. I won't mention any names or anything, but I could tell that they did not get it, in my opinion. They, in my opinion, saw the Bay Bridge as another bridge in their list of assets of bridges across the state of Maryland. They did not understand the single point of failure that it is for us. So people that live on the shore, and 60% of the people that live in Queen Anne's County commute over that bridge every day. It may be even a little higher now, 66%, something like that. And the others from Kent County and Caroline and Easton and even further. I was at a doctor's office the other day. Lady said, I come from Marydale every day to Annapolis to get to work. So a lot of people go over that bridge, 60,000 people a day on an average weekday, 100,000 on an average Saturday. But when we talked about a third Bay Bridge and there was talk about doing a study, what I was told was, Paul, it's a 16 weekend a year problem. Let me say that again. I was told by the people that run transportation in the state of Maryland when I was there, over and over again, it's a 16 weekend a year problem. So the thought was, are we really going to invest $5 billion on a problem that really only exists for who 16 weekends a year? Is it for Queen Anne's County residents? I know we only represent 1% of the state's population. At around 55,000, the state population being close to 6 million, we're less than 1%. So it's not a 16 weekend a year problem for people that live here. Maybe that's the weekends on the summer months when people are coming over where they experience congestion coming through our county. But for us, it's much more than that. It also represents, Clay, a single point of failure. It was terrible what happened at the Key Bridge, right? Key Bridge got hit by that boat, got shipped, got knocked down. But my son went over that bridge every day to go to work. And it was a terrible tragedy. But you know what? The next week, he didn't have to drive 2 hours more to get to work. He just went through the tunnel. So that's not a single point of failure. For people who live let's say on Kent Island, Clay, where you do. So if you had to go to Annapolis and that Bay Bridge came down for any reason, you'd have to go up 213, up to the northern part of the shore, go over the bridge, 95, and come down. 213 is single road, single lanes, or up 301 and then across. And it would add an hour and a half to 2 hours each way to your commute. It would be devastating for tens of thousands of people. So there's a study that was done, and you can find information about it at baycrossingstudy.com. There was a study that was done at the state. The governor, people know, it was in the newspaper, came out and said, I want the bridge to be put right where it's at, the third bridge, because we've done so much investment in the infrastructure, the roads. If we put it anywhere else, we'd have to spend a lot more money. And I get that. But you remember there was a comptroller whose name was Louis Goldstein. Mr. Maryland gave out those coins. God bless y'all real good and said all that. I love that guy. He had a plan, which was from Southern Maryland, maybe Calvert County, over to Cambridge as a place for a potential future location. And I think they looked at that in the study. They did what's called a tier 1 study, and they've analyzed it all. And they've come out with the idea that, hey, we're going to put it right where it's at, what the governor had suggested up front. And so now it's on a tier 2 study, and they've done a bunch of meetings, and they're planning to have more meetings this fall. And they plan to have a final determination, which they call final EIS, which is an environmental impact study, and a record of decision on the location within the next couple of years. So my question, Clay, though, is as a Queen Anne's County resident, even though I had a statewide position, my concern is what the impact will be on Queen Anne's County residents and Anne Arundel County residents.
That's what I care about. Eastern Shore, Queen Anne's County.
Yeah.
The 16 weekend problem.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If we dump 50,000 more cars a day on a Saturday into Queen Anne's County, how is that going to impact? How is that good for us? How is that good for our citizens? if it's going to be $8 billion, which I predict 8 to 10 billion by the time we get through everything, that's a lot of money. Holy moly! But can't if it's a fait accompli and it's going to be here, I get it. Hopefully, there's other alternatives that can still be considered that may not impact us as dramatically. But if it is a fait accompli, and that's simply my opinion, I'd prefer to continue to study it. But they've already come down with this, so it's probably already over the decision-making process. Although they're, I think, open for input. But shouldn't we also do something with our side roads? I mean, the commissioners and state highway have tried something on weekends where they close off entrances to get people back on, so that people that are looking at their phones for directions, it doesn't take them to go off. Google Maps doesn't do that. It tells you to stay on. But maybe there needs to be other things done, like dualization of Route 18 through Stevensville and Chester. I don't know. That could be worse. But I think we need to look at every decision we make now for our local commissioners, our senator, our delegates needs to be not what's only for good for the other 5,950,000 people, what they need every day, but what's good for people in Queen Anne's County.
Here, here, brother. I agree with you. As an Eastern Shoreman, we are often ignored. And I'm glad that you're a leader out there that's conscious of that and willing to help protect the shore. Well, I see by the time on the clock, our time has come to a close. So, Paul, it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Bye,
Goodbye,
Patrick.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. It didn't go that way in rehearsal. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I took all the time, Patrick. I know you have a lot of great stuff to share. We'll have to talk in the green room after.
I enjoyed hearing it. That was great.
We'll do a part 2 soon. Thank you,
Yeah,
Paul.
brother. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.